Today we're going to look at ga particle. Have you seen ga particles in a sentence? Well, we're going to look at how to use this one. So, ga particle, the first usage, のりこが走っている。のりこが走っている。Let's say it together. のりこが走っている。Now you see ga here. So, imagine we're walking in a park and we see a mutual friend, Noriko, and all of a sudden you said, oh, Noriko is running. Noriko ga hashite iru. So running. So another example. Inu ga iru. Inu ga iru. So let's say inu ga iru. Inu ga iru. So iru means to exist. There is a dog. There is a dog. Another example. 冬が好きです。冬が好きです。Let's say it together. 冬が好きです。This, if you add it, it makes it polite. So 冬 is winter. I like winter. 冬が好きです。All of the sentences that I described so far, you're introducing something to a conversation for the first time. This particle indicates that something is introduced to a conversation for the first time. So consider this example. I'm just gonna give you a part of a fairy tale. 昔々おじいさんがいましたがおじいさんは貧乏でした。I say, wa. Now, what's the difference between these? Once upon a time, 昔々 once upon a time, おじいさん an old man がいました。There was an old man. おじいさんは the old man 貧乏でした。Was poor. So you see, おじいさん is being introduced for the first time to a story. This is once upon a time. It's the beginning of a story. There is a old man. The old man was poor. So if you look at my previous video, you can recall this wa is used when the speaker assumes the hearer, the person I'm talking to, knows the word before. Simply think of it as English a, English a, an old man. In this case, it's going to be an, right? Or an old man. Whereas this one is the. You know the old man instead of an old man. So that's number one, use of ga particle. Number two, I've talked about this one before when describing wa particle, but when you use wh word, for example, where, who, when, what, right? You'd always use ga. Always use ga for that. Let's look at the example. 誰が来ますか? 誰が来ますか? 誰 who 来ます coming. Ka is simply a question particle, so meaning if it ends with ka, it is going to be a question. 誰が来ますか? Who's coming? You can never say wa or o or any other particle. Another one is 何が好きですか? 何が好きですか? What? 好き like. Again, this makes it a polite. Ka is a question particle. You can only use ga for that too. So that's the second point of using ga. You can only use wh with ga. Now, the third one, brace yourselves, is going to be very tricky. I'm just going to give you a sentence and describe each component for now, before I dive into how to use ga, because it's very, very complex. So this part, I want you to replay as much as possible until you fully understand. That's how difficult it is. I'm just gonna start with this one. 私はのりこがフランスへ行くことを知らなかった。It is a long sentence, but I want you to pay attention to this. 私はのりこがフランスへ 行くことを知らなかった。So what does it mean? 私は So that's I being the subject. のりこがのりこ Here uses がフランス is France. is to as in go to. 行くこと going to. O is an object marker. 知らなかった didn't know. So didn't know. See, it's verb, verb. And this part, のりこが to 行くことを It is a big object. 私は This part is a subject. のりこがフランスへ行くことを It's a big object. 知らなかった That's a verb. Each of the three, SOV, is called clause. Okay, so subject clause, object clause, which is the longest one, and the verb clause. 知らなかった Now, in a clause, there is a complete sentence. Within a clause, there is S subject, フランスへ that's the destination, 行くこと。行く is a verb. Within a clause, there is a sentence. So, if it's within a clause, you use ga. I know. I'll give you another example. ジェーンは私が家を出たとき、まだ寝ていた。ジェーンは私が家を出たとき、まだ寝ていた。So Jane is a name, is a subject. 私が家を出たとき。That's a huge clause. Again, M stands for modifier, modifying when. If you exclude this one, it still makes sense. Jane はまだ so still 寝ていた was sleeping or was asleep. So if you exclude this one, it still makes sense. Jane was still sleeping. But since modifier modifies the situation, so like when exactly was she asleep? Jane was asleep. Modifier modifies it, describes, gives a description of the situation. 私が So within this one, within this modifier clause, 私 is a subject. 家を出たとき So house, left, when. So when I left house. So if it's within a clause, for the subject, you use ga. It is a very advanced grammatical structure. Repeat this part of the video as many times as you need to. Another example. 私が昨日見た映画はドイツ映画だった。Let's say it together. 私が昨日見た映画はドイツ映画だった。So 私が This is being a subject clause now, this time. 私が昨日 So I 昨日 yesterday 見た watched 映画 is a movie は was So the movie I watched yesterday was ドイツ映画だった So was German movie ドイツ means German or Germany ドイツ映画 ドイツ映画 means Germany movie Again, you see this big clause being the subject So since it's within the subject you use ga to describe the subject within the subject. So that's the most confusing usage of ga particle this time. So the last usage of ga that I want to describe today is going to be some verbs, transitive verbs, meaning that you need an object to make sense. You need to use ga for that. Example, スポーツカーが欲しい。スポーツカーが欲しい。が is here. Now what's a sports car? Sports car. 欲しい. Want. So if you understand the Japanese grammar, this is going to be verb and it's going to be an object. Right? What's an object marker usually? You would use o to connect object and verb usually. But for 欲しい, you want to use ga. Another example. はるかはフランス語がわかる。はるかはフランス語がわかる。So if you're curious why there's wa instead of ga, even though it is most likely introduced, the name of a haruka, for the first time in the conversation, it is because wa is used as a topic marker, meaning that wa here is used as for or speaking of. If you want to learn more about wa particle, at the end of this video, I will have a link to the explanation of wa particle. I'm not gonna go too detail about wa here because I already described in another video. So this is wa, フランス語がわかる. So understand. So this subject, はるか、フランス語, French, わかる, understand. Again, O and V. Shouldn't you use O? Not with わかる. わかる, you want to use が. So 日本語がわかる、フランス語がわかる、ドイツ語がわかる. Now I hope this が particle was not too confusing for you. If you find it too confusing, I will give you an explanation if you leave a comment as briefly as possible. Japanese is such an interesting language. If you want to watch anime without subtitles, you need to learn Japanese. And don't you find it cool if you can speak Japanese? Wouldn't you be proud of yourself? What I tell my students usually is that there is no hard language. It's just how much time you can dedicate yourself to learn a language. I really encourage you to follow your dream of achieving Japanese fluency because I really believe in you and in your potential to master this language. So that was ga particle. There are some other usages of ga particle, but for now, to avoid confusion, I only describe this ga particle as a subject marker today. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. And if you want to see more of these videos, subscribe to my channel. And if you want to have a private one-on-one lesson with me, I have a link in the description below. You can check it out. I'll see you in the next one. Until next time.